All right. Well, as we continue our series on the architecture of reality, there's a it's a slight detour, but it's not exactly a detour. Um, it's important because we're shifting as we shift and talk about the shift from an understanding of a purposeful integrated universe to to a universe that doesn't have a nature but is formed by means of power or external force or manipulation of it becomes its shape because of external forces versus the understanding of things having a nature that and what they are is derived out of its nature. One of the things that uh, we have to talk about a little bit is knowledge. What does it mean to have knowledge of a thing and understand a thing? And this is where, and I want to use Aristotle's categories just because he thought really deeply through these issues. Um, he, the I think the answers he gives about how we have knowledge are helpful, but the categorization of knowledge to be able to talk about some of the shifts and changes are particularly helpful. So he talks about how there's really three kinds of knowledge, and then he breaks a couple of them down even further. There's theoretical knowledge, where we're trying to search for truth. There's productive knowledge, where the knowledge that it takes to make things, and then practical knowledge, the ability to make true judgments about a situation. Um, so, and it's interesting that I use productive and practical knowledge um, because when we say practical, we tend to mean that we can make things with it or make money with it, that kind of practical knowledge. But he that's not what Aristotle meant by practical knowledge. He meant the ability to make true judgments in reality. So first, the theoretical knowledge he actually breaks down into four categories: um, epistemae, theoretical knowledge of unchanging principles. So understanding the unchanging principles that you find in the world, that he calls that episteme. And then nous, these are Greek words, is discernment and direct apprehension of the fundamental principles of reality. So the unblinded eye of the soul. So he says we can get to the theoretical knowledge, that the episteme, sometimes just through direct apprehension. And this is the kind of knowledge that God has. And so there's a disagreement throughout history about whether or not mankind is even the kind of creature that can have a direct apprehension of the fundamental principles of reality, or if that's only the kind of knowledge that God can have. Can a created thing have the same kind of knowledge? But it's part of what it's the kind of knowledge that Plato teaches that the philosopher king has, um, direct apprehension of the fundamental principles of things. But then Sophia is what we translate it wisdom. It's virtue, but it's the virtue of theoretical reasoning about eternal things. So the ability to apply principles of truth and beauty and goodness, to the ability to apply those things properly, such that you can live out those principles. Right, Sophia is the kind of thing that means you can live well in the world because you know that you can reason properly about eternal things, reason properly about the principles of truth and beauty and goodness. And then gnome, spelled Gnome, like gnome, and that's a developed moral imagination so that you can pass true moral judgments. So it doesn't, you may or may not have the ability to enact those judgments, but you know right or wrong, right? That's a theoretical knowledge where you say, this is moral, that's immoral, this is right, this is wrong. And whether or not you can pass or whether or not you can enact those judgments and live in a moral way, isn't on the table yet in knowledge, right? Because he says you can be a judge uh, of other moral situations that you're not involved in, and be able to have a moral imagination that passes true judgments, and then you may fail in the moment with that, with the moral choice, but a moral judgment that knows it's wrong and then can't help itself, that sort of thing would still be a developed moral imagination. Now, Aristotle, Cicero, all of them would argue, and especially when you get into the rhetoricians, when you talk through and you read through the Greek and Roman and early Christian rhetoricians, they all argue that if you can't enact a true moral imagination, you will lose it, right? That your moral imagination ends up being degraded by an immoral life. But the knowledge of developed a more moral imagination that can pass true moral judgments is called gnome. And then, so that's the theoretical knowledge: epistemae, nous, sophia, and gnome. Theoretical knowledge, direct apprehension of the fundamental principles of reality, the ability to live well in the world, and the ability to make moral judgments. Those are all different ways he breaks down theoretical knowledge. And then productive knowledge, what he calls technes, the ability to form the nature of a thing, knowledge of the rules of production of a thing, or the ability to create a thing, right? You know how to make a table. That's techne. You've got productive knowledge. How an engine works such that you can fix it. You know how it's supposed to work. Or you understand the nature of engines such that you can create a new kind of engine. That would be techne. It's a productive knowledge. And then practical knowledge, which is the ability to enact proper judgments, the kind of knowledge that makes it so that you can live the good life. Phronesis is the first word that he uses for it, the ability to really live life properly, a practical understanding of theoretical knowledge. So you've got changing circumstances in the world, but you can continue to live a good moral life. And you've got this world of cause and effect, and you understand how to live well in that world, to be able to practically fulfill well-informed, well-reasoned desires, right? He calls that phronesis. And Sophia and phronesis are cousins in knowledge, because Sophia is the ability to apply principles, and then phronesis is really that ability to live according to them, right? So you might know and understand the principles, be able to apply them to other people, but let's say a movie critic, right? That he understands the principles of story and of right and wrong, and he can criticize. He can be a good, helpful critic in movies, but he doesn't know how to tell a story. Right? When something's broken, when a story doesn't work, he wouldn't know how to fix it. That the ability to have to have knowledge that you can't, and then apply it, is phronesis. And then the last one is delecta, which we usually translate taste. Properly informed artistic and literary sensibilities, knowledge by which we understand how and what we should be passionate about, what moves, to be moved by what's true and good and beautiful, and then not moved by false, immoral ugliness, right? Properly ordered passions is another way to talk about that, right? So delecta, a good taste. So you've got theoretical knowledge, you've got productive knowledge, and you've got practical knowledge. And we're going to be talking uh, about the shift away from an understanding of a well integrated universe. And one of the things that happens is they start separating the kinds of knowledge, whereas when Aristotle and throughout the Middle Ages, when this is discussed, the idea is you should have good theoretical knowledge and the ability to apply it in the world, it both in productive ways and in practical ways. And you should be able to produce things in the world and be able to apply an understanding of virtue, to live a virtuous life. And you don't really call things knowledge until you're doing until you know the right thing to do and you can do the right thing. Right? That's when it really becomes a knowledge that's not a separated knowledge, because you're after an integrated knowledge, right? You can make moral judgments. Your moral imagination is well informed and can pass true, good moral judgments, and then you can live a true and good and beautiful life as well. So that's what you're after. Aristotle breaks down the kinds of knowledge so that when something's broken, you can fix it. Right? That's the purpose. When you realize that your moral imagination is compromised in some way, then you work to you put in the work and figure out what are good and true moral judgments in different areas, and then live them out. Right, that's the goal of knowledge for Aristotle, and I find it helpful to break it down like this because we're going to start talking about some of the people that really get it wrong.